of consumer behavior. In our last lecture, we discussed about various personal influential factors, and today's lecture will discuss about the group dynamics, various group factors which influences the customer behavior, the consumer behavior, how a group influences the decision making of consumer. In today's lecture, we'll start with the reference group influence and group influence, how the reference group influences the consumer behavior, and what is group dynamics, how group impacts the consumer behavior. What is reference group? Right, it is very important to understand the reference group. A reference group includes all those that we refer to consciously or unconsciously or are influenced by either through interaction or indirect impact. Reference group, as the name indicates, what is the reference group? Reference groups are those people whom we refer to either consciously or unconsciously, or with whom we are influenced with. Suppose we are influenced with, or we refer to various artists, actors, right, or various intellectuals according to our interest. So, reference group includes all those which we refer to consciously or unconsciously, or we are influenced by either through interaction or indirect impact, right? A reference group, in other words, a group to which a person will compare himself or herself to determine his or her own relative standing. Consumer also look to a reference group for guidance and advices. So, what is a reference group? Reference group is that group, right, to which a person will compare himself or herself, whether how I am different from that group, what I have to do to be a part of that group, how the people of that group behaves, right? So when a person compare himself or herself with a group to determine his or her own relative standing or a position, right? Consumer also look for a group for guidance and advices, right? That is known as a reference group. Reference groups are usually the small groups and are not as broad as an entire social class. Reference groups are the could be a small group, say a group of reference group. Suppose if you admire some actor, right? Then that group of actor or that group of intellectual or that group become a small or a group of your friends, of your club friends, that could be your uh, that the members of a specific club could be a reference group, right? So reference group is usually a small group and it is not as broad as the entire social class. These includes the family, close friends, neighbors, a religious group or the work groups, and also the athletic groups. Any group, right? It could be a intellectual group, it could be athletic group, it could be a sports person group, it could be your intellectual groups, it could be your neighbor group with whom you refer to, right? It could be a religious group, it could be close friends or a family, right? How reference group influences the consumption, how the reference group impacts the consumer behavior or the consumption or the consumer decision. So I hope this is clear. What is a reference group? Reference group is that group that people look that someone follows intentionally or unintentionally. A reference group affect the consumer through a variety of means, through norms, through information, through influencing the value expressive needs of the consumer. Right? See, as the definition of reference group states that a group of a group to which a person will compare himself or herself to determine his or her relative position. So reference group affect the consumer through a various of means, that is through norms, right? That the compare that a consumer or the individual compare the norms or the values or the with the reference group, right? That it influences the reference group influences consumer through information. They provide us the information, right? They influences through a value expressive needs of the consumer. They influence consumer through bringing about the attitude change by encouraging the expression of certain values and attitude expressed through the group, right? When a group expresses certain values, right, or a certain attitude, it can change the attitude of the consumer, right? So it can change the attitude of the consumer. That reference group could change the attitude of the consumer by encouraging expression of certain value. They encourages certain expressions of the certain value, how this will make change in how this product can make change in your personality, right? Or the can expression of this certain attitude, right? That impacts that they impact the attitude. The reference group can impact the attitude of the consumer. Because an individual wants to be a part of a group, he or she will be influenced by the values and attitude of the group. What is the reference group? Reference group, a person wants to be, a person always wants to be a part of it, that group, they want to be like that. That's why we consider them as a reference. Reference means from which reference means what? In general sense, references from which we take certain advices or the references. When we take the references or advices, means we want to be a part of, we want to be like them. So we want to be a part of that reference group. So an individual wants to be a part of that group, right? So they were always influenced by the values and the attitude of that group. And because they were because the individual is influenced by, the individual will be influenced by the values and the attitude of that group, then the values and attitude of that group influences the attitude of the individual consumer. Individual who feels a strong sense of identification with group do so because they derive the strong psychological or material benefit from being associated with that group, right? We want to be, see, influence group, that is the influence group could be like everyone wants to be, every girl wants to look like some pretty actress type, right? So that actress could be a reference group. The the cosmetics that she has been using could be could impact the consumer behavior, the consumer decision, right? So reference group influences the consumption or the consumer decision, because the values express, the values or the attitude of the reference group impacts the attitude and values of the consumer, because the consumer wants to be the part of that reference group because they admire that reference group. When you admire someone, you would like to be like them, right? And when you would like to be there, would like to be like them, then the values and the attitude of that group impacts the values and attitude of the consumer, right? Reference group also influences the consumption through norms and conformity pressure. So reference group also influences the consumer behavior or the consumer decision through norms and the conformity pressure, that if you want to be a part of this, you should be like this. If you want to be a part, if you want to be like that person or that group, right? That is, it is required that you should behave or you should dress up like that particular group or a person. That is, they influences the consumption through norms and conformity pressure, that if you want to be a part of this group, behave like that group, right? Be like that group. All member of group must adhere to the norms established by that group. That is, if you want to be a part of that group, that you must be like that group, behave like that group, right? Behave in a particular way that the members of that particular group behaves. So it impacts the consumptions through conformity pressure. To enforce the normative system, group tends to exert conformity pressure, direct or indirect, on their members. Sometimes they directly put the pressures on their members, or sometimes indirectly, right? So levels of group involvement, there are the three process or levels of group involvement, right? Like compliance, identification, and internalization, right? So there are the three process or level of group involvement, how you get involved in that group, right? How you could be the part of that group. That is, there are the three processes. The first is the compliance, second is identification, and third is internalization, right? Compliance, what is compliance? Involves only overt behavior on the part of individual and makes no demand on the personal beliefs and the attitude. What is the compliance? That is, that behaves, that involves only the overt behavior, overtly behavior on the part of the individual. They makes no demands on the personal beliefs, on the attitude. Identification represents a closer, more dependent relationship than implied by the compliance. In identification, the individual complies to maintain a social relationship. Identification also, social relationship and identification also reinforces the self perception of the individual. And internalization is the internalizing the values of the group at the third stage. In internalization, consumer enforces the values of the group even in its absence. So first is the compliance, that involves the overtly behavior on the part of the individual, right? Overtly behavior that makes no demands on the personal beliefs of the personal beliefs and the attitude. That is the compliance. Then the identification, that they want to maintain some social relationship with that group or a reference group, right? And then identification also reinforces the self perception of an individual. What it reinforces the self perception, what an individual thinks about oneself. So we discussed about the self perception in our previous lecture, right? Then the third stage is the internalization, internalizing the values of the group, right? It occurs at the third stage. And the internalization, consumer enforces the values of a group even in its absence, right? Internalization is when we internalize something, that even in the absence of the group, we internalize the values or the attitude of that particular group. So level of group involvement includes the three stages, right? There are types of reference groups. There are many types of reference group. The membership or non-membership reference group. Membership groups are those which an individual belongs, right? While in contrast to non-membership groups are those that an individual may aspire to belong. Membership group could be like, if you are a member of some sports team, then you are a or so then that is known as the membership group. When you are a member of a particular, when an individual belongs to a particular group, then that is known as the membership group. And non-membership group are those which an individual may aspire to be a part or will aspire to belong to. Non-membership group is that group which you want to be a part of, and that group is known as the non-membership group. Suppose if you want to be a part of some club, right, then that is known as the non-membership group. While membership group is when you are a part of that particular group. Formal group and informal group, it depends on whether reference group tend to take a formal or informal structure. Formal group is what is the formal group? There is a formal structure, a well defined hierarchy, then that is known as the formal group. Formal group, suppose if you are a part of some group where there is a well defined hierarchy, when you are associated with some organization, right, where there is a well defined hierarchy, when you are a part of, say, some any of the organization. It could be any educational institutions, right? Like when you are a part of some street school, if there is a well defined hierarchy, right, then that is a formal group. Or informal group is that group where there is a no formal structure. Informal group, like a group of friends, it is an informal group. All are equal. There is no well defined hierarchies. An informal group. Then primary group and secondary group. What is a primary group? What is the secondary group? That depends on the primary and secondary group depends on the frequency of contact. How how frequently you come into contact of that group. Primary group can either be a formal group or informal group. If a person is in a regular contact with certain individual such as families, friends, colleagues, business associate, then these are referred to as a primary informal group. When you regularly come in contact with someone, that is known as the primarily informal group, right? Because you directly come to your family, how could be you that there is not there, although there is a well defined structure, but still there is no much formalities in the family, right? So families, family or your friend group or your peer group or your colleagues group could be a primary type of a group. Secondary form infrequently, are well structured, and there is no closely knit between the members, right? Thus, the shopping group and a club membership group constitute a secondary because because of their less frequent contact, right? Suppose if you are a member of some club and you hardly visit that club, right, then you become a secondary formal member of that club, right? So primary group or secondary group, primary group is that group which that it depends on the contact of the frequency. Those groups in which you are in contact, if a person is in regular contact with a certain individual or a group, then that is known as the primary group, right? An informal group where there is a no well defined hierarchy and there is a close knit between the members of a group, then that is the informal group. Secondary group is that group secondary group is that group where the group meet infrequently, then that is the secondary meet. And that is and then formal group, as I said, there is a well defined hierarchy. Aspiration group. Aspiration group is that you want to be a part of this. Anticipatory aspiration group is that a person anticipates to become a part of that group sometime in the future, then that is known as anticipatory aspiration group. Second is symbolic aspiration group. Symbolic aspiration group are those group that an individual is not likely to belong to, such as professional sports group, even though the person may be attracted to that group, right? So marketer appeal the symbolic aspiration by using celebrity to advertise certain products. So there are two types of the aspiration group. First is anticipatory aspiration group, and second is symbolic aspiration group. Anticipatory aspiration group is that an individual anticipates joining at some point of time in life, that is some future time, that is the anticipatory aspiration group. Second is symbolic anticipatory group is that an individual not likely to belong to that group, they don't want to join this marketer appeals the symbolic aspiration by using the celebrities to endorse their product, right? We don't want to be part of that. See, we don't want to be a part of a Bollywood, but we admire, right? Admire their beauty, their acting skill, or we admire them because of any of the reasons. So marketer appeals to symbolic aspirations, right? They use the celebrities to endorse the product. Each type of reference group has importance in marketing, depending on the type of the influences exerted. The common factor among these various type of reference group is that each is used by the consumer as a point of reference at different times. to evaluate actions, beliefs, and attitude. All types of the groups, whether it's a primary group, whether it's a secondary group, whether it's a formal group, whether it's an informal reference group, whether it's anticipatory affiliation group, whether it's a symbolic anticipatory symbolic affiliation group. Every type of group is important and plays an important role in consumer behavior, right? That the consumer uses these group as a point of reference at different times, right, to evaluate their action, beliefs, and attitude. Primary groups are more important to consumer in developing product beliefs, taste, and preferences that have more direct influence on the purchasing behavior, right? Obviously primary group have direct impact on the consumer behavior, because primary groups includes your family, right? We understand various things from the family, we inherit certain characters from the family, right? We usually follow the norms, values, and the tradition of the family. We don't pay much attention because our father believes that the brand wise product is much better than any other product. Then we have seen it because of the values and beliefs of our families, like that this product, that brand wise product is better, right? So we inherited that attitude, right? And that is how the primary group impacts the consumer behavior most, right? That have the direct impact on the that have direct influence on consumer behavior or the purchasing behavior, right? As a result, the advertiser frequently portray consumption among friends or within the family context, right? Next is the normative reference group. What is normative reference group? These are the group whose values, norms, perspective, and individual uses in defining the personal social situation. Norms represent the shared value judgment about how things should be done by the members of that group, right? Like a dress code indicates the impact of normative influence on clothing. Similarly, the norms influence how much a person eat, drink at a party. Normative influences refer to influence exerted by a group to conform to its norms and behavior. So, what is normative reference group? Normative group are those group which influences the influence of the normative group is exerted. That is the normative influences refers to the influences exerted by a group to conform to its norms and behavior. If you want to be the part of that particular group, then you should behave, that you should adhere to the norms and behavior of that particular group, right? And the norms, what is the normative, you know? What is norms means? Norms means norms represents the shared value judgments, right? Shared values. So how to behave in a party, how to dress up, how to eat, how to behave in a particular situation, right? They all these has been defined by the group, and every member of this of that group should adhere to those norms and behavior, should conform to the norms and behavior. That is the normative reference group. These group are the groups whose values, norms, and perspective and individual uses in defining the personal and social situation. Comparative reference group. Consumer constantly compare their attitude to those of the members of their important groups. We always compare ourselves with others or one group with the others. So comparative reference group is that groups with whom we compare our group or ourselves with others. So consumer constantly compare their attitude to those of the members of their important groups. In doing so, they support attitude and behavior. As a result, the basis of comparative influence is a process of comparing oneself to other members of the group and judging whether it will be supportive, The formative reference group is to provide a base for validating the values, beliefs, and attitude. Right. So comparative reference group is what? Comparative as an definition. When we compare ourselves with the other reference groups, and why we compare ourselves with the others. The function of the comparative reference group is to provide the basis for validating the values, beliefs, and attitude. How our values, attitude, and beliefs are similar or different from the other group, or better than the other group. In case of the comparative reference group, value expressive influences occurs when group is used to express these certain values. Right. When one has to express these certain values, right, so it occurs that the value comparative reference groups, value expressive influences occurs when you have to express certain values. That is, smoke cigarette in a reference group where it is okay to smoke is a type of a value expressive influence. So, what is value expressive influence? Right? Value expressive influence occur when group is used as dissociative reference group. They are negative reference dissociative. They are negative to extent that an individual does not wish to be identified with them, and therefore tries not to behave like the member of dissociative group. First, the comparative reference group, if we want to be the part of that group, right, then we behave in a certain manner that has been accepted by the group, right, and that we can form a close association with it. While in the dissociative reference group, we don't want to be recognized as a part of that group, right. We try to avoid to link with that group. Such dissociation from a group occur when an individual are striving to move into higher social classes. They may attempt to avoid buying the product and the services used by the dissociated. Move into the higher class, then individual will try to dissociate from the lower class, right, and they try to attempt to avoid buying the product or the services used by the dissociative group, right, from which he wants to dissociate, or to behave they try to behavior or the norms groups. They don't want to be associated, they don't want to be recognized, they don't want that they should they, that there should be any association with that particular group, right. They want to dissociate themselves from that particular group, and this usually happens when we try to move to some other class, or to the some other group or the higher group, right. Factor affecting the influence of reference group. There are certain factors which affects the influences of the reference group. We discuss the various types of the reference groups, right. How informed and experienced the individual is, right. So there are certain factors which influences the which influence affecting the influence of reference group. Although the reference group influences the consumer decision, but that depends on the information and the experience of the individual. A person who has a little or no first hand experience with the product or service, and also little or no information, will tend to rely on the reference group. Whereas there is an insufficient expression or information, a consumer is more susceptible to the influence of others, right. If consumer is experienced and well informed, then they will not much rely on the reference group. While if the consumer and an individual is not well versed or well informed with the product or the services, then they will be influenced by the reference group, then they will be susceptible to the influence of the reference group or influence of the others, right. Then second factor which affects the influence of reference group is the credibility of the reference group, right. The higher the reference group is rated on the credibility, the more powerful it will be perceived to be. and the more it will tend to change the beliefs, attitude, and behavior. It is less, there will be less chances to change the attitude of the consumer. If reference group is more credible, then there are more chances that it will impact the values, beliefs, and the attitude or the behavior of the consumer, right? Reference group influence on the products and group and brands, right? Obviously reference groups influences the products and the brand. Reference group influences on both the products and the brand decision, right? It depends on the conspicuousness, right? There are two dimensions or elements by which conspicuousness is assessed, right? So reference groups influence on both product and brand decision is a function of its conspicuousness, how conspicuous it is, right? There are the two dimension of elements by which conspicuousness is assessed, that is there are the exclusivity and the visibility of the product. The two dimensions, that is the exclusivity of the product and the visibility of the product, plays an important role, right? Although the reference group influences both the product and the brand decision, and it depends on the, and this impact or the influence or the impact of the reference group on the product and brand depends on two things, that is exclusivity of the product and the visibility of the product. The exclusivity of the dimension refers to exclusivity in ownership of the product. That is, suppose if there is a product, everyone already owns the product, then it is less conspicuous than if only a few people on it, that is the exclusive product. How exclusive that product is, if everyone owns that product, that product is not very exclusive type of a product. If masses owns that product, if very few people own that product, then that product become exclusive, right? Then it will become more conspicuous, that is the exclusivity. The first factor which impacts is the which impacts the brand and product is the exclusivity of the product. If product is exclusive, conspicuous, right, then it becomes the exclusive product. A visibility dimension refers to the product or the brand being seen and identified by the people, right? Means visibility, how visible that product is, how it refers, and brand being seen and identified by people, how people see and identify that brand. This has its primary effect on the brand decision. The visibility dimension of conspicuousness is built as a public private dimension. See, exclusivity depends on the ownership of the product, right? Visibility depends the how that product or brand being seen and identified by other people, how that has been seen and identified by the other people. The visibility dimension of consciousness is built as a public private dimension. Product consumed in public are more conspicuous, while product consumed in the private is less conspicuous, obviously, right? Visibility depends Visibility dimension of conspicuousness is built as a public-private dimension. If a brand is consumed or a product is consumed in public, then it becomes more conspicuous, that it is visible. And if product is consumed in private, then it is less conspicuous, right? Influence on product and brand. Reference group influences is therefore likely to be strong for both product and brand. Influence on product only. What is the impact of reference group on product only? That is the private, like private luxuries. Some product categories are so distinctive that owning them is sufficiently representative of group standards. If someone owns that particular brand or a product, right, that represents the group standard. Friends and neighbors will contact with recently acquired product, and the pattern of ownership will spread within the group. This is the influence of product only, that is the private luxuries. Products are so some product categories are so distinctive that owning them is a sufficiently representative of a group standard. Influence on the brand only, that is the public necessity. There are some products that are used by almost everyone, like clothing, furniture, toilet soaps, etc. In such cases, the product is not subject to group influence because it has been used by everyone, and that totally depends on individual, that is not a subject of group influence. The brand become an important factor subject to group influence. The product is not a subject of group influence, but brand is a product of group influence. Soap is a product, it is not a subject of group influence, but brand of this soap is subject of group influence, right? One group that emphasize designer clothes as a distinguishing feature, another may emphasize a leisure wear. So, public necessity, that brand is a subject of group influence in public necessities, right? While product is not. But in private necessities, the product itself is a subject of group influence. It states the standard of a group, right? No group influence. No group influence as private luxuries, the product of private luxuries is a subject of influence, reference influence. Brand of public necessities is a subject of influence, or no group influence, that is the private necessities. Some product have low social visibility for both the product and the brand. In such cases, the reference group influence is weak or absent. Such products are then bought on the basis of product attributes suitable to the consumer. Product knowing visibility, complexity, and perceived risks, such as the bread, is not likely to be susceptible to the personal influence. So there are three types of the necessities, right? There are three types of the products or the brand. The first is on which the group influences. The first is the private luxuries. The private luxuries in this, the group influences the product. Private luxuries, that is owning that particular product, describes the status of the or an individual, right? That is the group that is owning the product. It has been influenced by the group, that it shows the what should I say? It shows the value of that particular group, right? They are so that in private luxuries, some products are distinctive and owning them is sufficiently representative of the group standard, and it has been influenced by the group. Then the influence on the product, that is in product in privateness, public luxuries, right? Product and brand in public luxuries, reference group influence is likely to be strong for both the product and the brand, right? Private luxuries, again, private luxuries were described. Public necessities, for public necessities, product is not important, right? Product is not influenced by the group, but brand plays an important role. The group influences the brand of the product, right? While in private necessities, no product or no brand, right? There is no influence of the group on the either on the product or the brand of the private necessities, right? Reference group application in marketing. How can we apply the reference group in marketing? The reference group concept is used by the advertiser to persuade consumer to purchase product and brands by portraying the product being consumed in a socially pleasant situation, or else using a prominent and attractive people to endorse the product, because uh, when some prominent or attractive people endorse the product, and if we want to be like them, or if I want to lead a life like them, or if we want to appear like them, right, then it impacts the consumer behavior or the decision. Where the reference group influence is operative, it is necessary that advertising should stress the kind of people who buy the product. The first objective of the advertiser to identify the lifestyle characteristic of a reference group, right? So the advertiser try to portray the lifestyle characteristic of a reference group. What type of a lifestyle that reference group lead? If you want to lead that type of a lifestyle, you should have this product, or you could buy that product. Use of celebrities for product endorsement. As we all know that advertisers spends a lot of money, a lot of amount on celebrities in expectation that their audience will react positively to celebrities association with their product. Because if they want to, as we all know that we admire various celebrities, we want to be like them, we want to look like them, we want to lead life like them. So the advertisers hopes that there is that the audience will react positively to a celebrities association with that product, and they will purchase that product. Celebrities represent to some extent the idealization of life for the consumer. What type of a life the consumer want to be, what type of a life should be. Use of experts for the product endorsement. Then again, the second type is that the advertisers uses the experts for the product endorsements, right? That is the second type of reference group appeal used in advertising, is use a person who is expert in this field. The expert helps the prospective consumer to evaluate the advertised product. It creates a confidence in the product, so they can evaluate an advertised product. It creates an um, confidence, right? Then use of spokesperson for a product endorsement. The third type of a reference group appeal is that the spokesperson, that is a common man's appeal. It demonstrates to the consumer, to someone like him or her uses it, is satisfied with that product. That if person endorse some product, we feel like that person is like us, and if he is happy and satisfied with that product, we can purchase that product. The common man appeal is especially effective in the public health announcement, because most people seem identify with the people like themselves, and when it comes to such messages, right? What is the role of opinion leadership in the transmission of information, right? That leadership, that is the opinion of leadership, plays an important role. Every group has a leader, every group has a leader, or more specifically an opinion leader. That person has opinion about each and everything. That person is well informed, has opinion, and his or her opinion matters a lot. Opinion leadership has been defined as a process by which one person, the opinion leader, informally influences the actions or attitude of others who may be opinion seeker or opinion recipients. Who passes on information are known as the opinion leaders, right, or opinion of that person, right? So opinion leaders indirectly plays an important role. The concept of social class, its nature and the meaning. See, social class, what is class? Class refers to a social position individual occupies in the society. Class is a achieved position, achieved status, right? There are two types of the status: ascribed and achieved status. Ascribed status is that status which we get, which we inherit, like a caste. In Indian society, caste is an ascribed status, it cannot be changed. While achieved status is that status which we achieve through hard work. Class is an example of an achieved status. So social class refers to the social position that individual occupies in the society. We can achieve any of the position in the society through our hard work, through our action. Social standing is a result characteristics such of education, occupation, ownership of property, and the sources of income. All these are the factors which determines our social class. That is our education, that is our occupation, ownership of the property, sources of the income. It determines our class. This leads to the division of society into hierarchy of social classes, ranging from high status to low status. Members within each of the social classes have related the same status to each other. There is some relative status to each other. The hierarchical aspect of class is important to the marketing because the consumer in a particular social class develop references and consumption pattern that are unique to them. This hierarchical classes is very important for the marketers or from the marketing point of view or from the marketing aspect. Why? Because the consumer of a particular class develops a reference and consumption pattern of that is unique to them, right? A middle class consumption pattern and preferences could be unique to middle class, and the upper class consumption patterns or preferences could be unique to them, right? Social class and social stratification. Social class is what? Social class is, as I told you, that is the position which one held in the society, right? That is the social class, social position that an individual occupies in this society. What is social stratification? It refers to the group or strata of the people, right? Stratification, that is the when we divide these societies into various stratas or the group of people within the social stratum tend to view those in other social classes as being socially superior or inferior to them, right? Social strata is what? The group or a strata of the people, stratification, or the group of the people, and people within the social stratum tend to view those in the other classes as being socially superior or inferior to them. Social class could be considered as a result from the large group in a population sharing approximately the same lifestyle who are stratified according to their social status and the prestige, right? So social stratum is division of the groups, division of the population into various strata, and social class is uh, that is the position which one holds in this society, and the social class could be considered as resulting from the larger group in a population sharing approximately the same lifestyle. That is, the middle class share the same lifestyle. Lower middle class share the same lifestyle, while the upper class share the same lifestyle. They are stratified according to their social status and the prestige, right? Um, People buying behavior is strongly influenced by the social class to which they belong to or aspire to belong rather than by income alone. So the buying behavior, the class impacts the buying behavior of the consumer, right? The buying behavior of the person. That is, the class influences the consumer or the class. The people's buying behavior actually depends on the social class to which they belong or they aspire to belong. Social class and relative standing within the class also decide the kind of purchases with regard to house, car, clothing, food, furniture, and appliances consistent with what is expected by their peers. At times, right, the choices of the middle class, the people who belongs to a social stratum, that is the middle class, their choices could be more or less similar, right? And the choices of the upper class could be more or less similar, right? Social class relative standing, that standing related to purchases, what type of food, clothes, and the furniture they prefer, and the appliances they prefer to purchase. They The middle class people will prefer their choices will more or less be similar, right? Is consistent, right? It is consistent with what is expected by their peers, by the others. So we usually say that we don't eat this type of a food, this type of furniture or this type of a house is good for us or for our class, right? So class impacts the purchasing behavior or the purchasing decision, because we want to associate ourselves with that particular class, or we want to that is we are strongly influenced by the class, social class to which we belong or we aspire to belong, right? So family, next is the family buying influences or family life cycle and the buying rules. That is, the family plays an important role in the buying decision. Yes, obviously family is a primary reference group, primary informal reference group. Primarily informal reference group, family has an influence on the purchasing decision. Strongest, most immediate and most pervasive influence on the decision making. Family influence comes from the fact that the bonds within the family are likely to be much more powerful and intimate than those of other small groups. We are much more influenced by our family rather than the other people. Because of these bonds, the family has a profound social, cultural, and the psychological, physiological, and economic influence on the consumer. Within the family, the operating unit of analysis, a reciprocal operates on all decision. There are three main sources of influence in the family decision process: the father, the mother, and the family members. All three plays an important role in decision making, in consumer decision making: the father, the mother, and the family member. The main buying influence that operates on the individual within the family are the consumer socialization and the integrational influences. Actually, there are the two main buying influences that operate on the individual within the family. Within the family, the two factors which impacts the buying decision, that is the consumer socialization, how consumer has been socialized, that is how the values, ethics, and the socialization process of the consumer, and the intergenerational influences. Intergenerational influences impacts the buying influences. Consumer socialization. Socialization is by which young people acquire the skill, knowledge, and attitude relevant to their functioning as a consumer. We acquire certain skills, knowledge, and attitude, right? And this acquiring the knowledge, skills, and attitude is known as the socialization, and it is relevant for the functioning as a consumer. Through a variety of family interaction, the consumer learns to develop their taste, preferences, shopping style, how to budget money, what type of clothes to wear, for what occasion, and also what to store or not, right? So all these factors influences the consumer socialization. There are various factors that influences the consumer socialization, like background factor. Socioeconomic status plays an important role in socialization, right? Sex, age, social class, and religious background, all these factors plays an important role in consumer socialization. Then there are various socializing agent like media, family member, peers, teachers. All this plays an important role in socialization of an individual. Then there is a learning mechanism, that is modeling, reinforcement, stages of cognitive development, and then comes the socialized consumers, right? All these factor plays an important role, and then by the impact of these factors a socialized consumer comes out. The background environment factor, the socializing agent, there is no need to explain it. Consumer socialization occurs through two types of the learning. Learning is modeling, reinforcement, stages of cognitive development, right? So one is the through imitating of others. By observing the actions of others in the family, we learn things, what our mother do, what our father do, how our, how elder behaves, right? The second type of the learning is operant conditioning. This means that the peer that receives the praise is complimented like to be repeated by a child. Suppose a child finishes the food given to him or her, that type of a learning is known as the operant conditioning. And then he start, when he has been complimented for that, the child would like to repeat that. So two type of learning is that, one is that is through imitation. We learn from imitating, that is by observing the others. And that is another type of learning is operant conditioning, that is consumption. It means that the consumption behavior that receives the praise and the complimented. If someone compliments our products or us for some purchases, we feel like that, yes, we have done a great thing. Consumer socialization occurs in subtle way that are not always obvious. There are four primary ways in which family influences can be transmitted to other individual within the family. The parents act as a model for the child on the numerous consumption occasion. Obviously, through parents we learn about the buying and the consumption process. Next is parent child discussion about the particular product or the brand, why they are good for you and why they are not, right? And second is child interaction. It becomes important socializing influence when more than one child is present, when when the two or more child discuss it among themselves. Fourth is the child begin to handle money as he or she becomes older. Thus, through gifts and allowances, the family provides the opportunity for a child to become more experienced as a consumer. When family gives the pocket money or allowances to the child and tell them to spend it in your own way, and in this way, the family provides an opportunity to a child to be more experienced as a consumer, right? Intergenerational consumer influences refers to what is passed along from our grandparents to the parents, from parents to the children, from children to their children. That is intergenerational influences, right? When the grandparents, they like, it includes the religious values, right? It includes the cultural values, includes the general lifestyles, attitude towards the education or the social life or sports. Such intergenerational influences plays an important role in forming a product and the brand differences, right? Family role structure and buying behavior, right? There could be there is a the various role has been played by the various members of the family in making a purchasing decision. The first is the initiator. This is the person who first suggests the ideas of the product or the service and initiate the purchase process to begin with. The initiator could be a stranger also. Suppose I have seen someone, right, having a certain product. I feel like that I should have that product, we need that product. That stranger could be an initiator, or I could be an initiator, right? Or second is the influencer, someone whose opinion is valued in the decision making process. The influencer could be a friend, could be a brother, could be a sister, could be a spouse, or any other which product of which brand one should buy. After all, aspects such as price, quality, service has been thought all over. That is the decider. Finally, the buyer or the purchaser. This is an individual who actually purchases the product, pays for it, and take home and arranges for the delivery. Very often, the purchaser and the decider are the same person, particularly for a big value items. Then the consumer. Consumer is the user of the goods or the services. In family consumption decision, a large number of purchases are for the shared consumption. Right? So, various roles have been played by the various members or by a single member, and it influences the buying behavior. There are the stages of the family. The family decision stages in the family. The family decision stages. The first stage is the problem recognition. What is the problem? whether we need that product or not. If we need that product, then search for the information about the brands, about the product, about the stores and everything. Evaluation of alternative, then the families evaluate the alternative, which one is better than the other one, and then the final decision and purchases. The family life cycle concept, and this family life cycle plays an important role in marketing, right? Family life cycle concept, we will discuss about this family life cycle concept in our next lecture. Till then, namaskar.